When engaging in movement, the whole body is at prayer, not just mind and mouth.
What if my whole life, including my physical body, is a manifestation of a relationship with a greater invisible wholeness, a greater wholeness growing in my attention? An interplay between the manifest and the unmanifest is calling me to a deeper journey.
I was going to tell you how you get that purity going. Full body exformation. I learned that category from Cynthia Winton Henry and Phil Porter, founders of the movement called InterPlay. Maybe some of you have had some in touch with that. And the idea of that movement is that we need to exform our life. We just take in information all the time. Information. But this religious practice demands exformation. And they came up with all kinds of ridiculous ways to get your exformation going, like singing opera, fake opera, over some subject like what you did to get up in the morning or something, babbling something about your shoes or whatever. Or we have a wonderful one that our faculty does every time we meet, and that's called DT3. DT3 is called Dance 1, Dance 2, and Dance 3. Dance Talk 3, yeah. Dance Talk 3. So each person gets up there and does a little stupid dance, something you're not used to doing or do every day, and then they talk. Just no preparation, just talk about your life, whatever way comes to you that day. And when you get to the end of that, you dance another little dance. Exformation, see? And tell another story or two. Dance a third time, tell another story or two. This is a practice of full body exformation, which practice assists you in being audaciously bold in your life. Do you see if that's possible? I mean, this woman who invented all this, InterPlay, was a clergyman, and she introduced dancing into her congregation. They threw her out. She deliberately left, but it was over this issue that they didn't appreciate exformation. Anyway, they have a wonderful movement going, and it's added something to my understanding of religion that I simply did not have before.
We coined the phrase of body intellectuals. Obviously, we're intellectuals. And when I taught at PSR, that was sometimes problematic for people who wanted to come from their very heady classes and just lay down on the floor of my classroom and say, "Can I be a body now?" But Phil and I are intellectuals, and we think through the lens of our whole experience, which we would call the body. So even our thinking would be embodied, right? And how does that present? So having an embodied way of talking and thinking, it has been our quest to try to find accessible language, non-theistic language, for anybody who might be interested in the proposition of how our lived experience could be more generative for us. And we found that through singing and dancing and storytelling and silence, these other big forms that we don't often use in discourse, these actually present separate, avenues of information that do not cross over. You can't get the same information from talking as you get from dancing, or from dancing as in singing. You can't. So by bringing them all together like the ancients did, then we have more data, we have more, amazing information in our own lived experience. You bring that into a community body who's having that. So many things shift and change. There's so much more information and complexity, but it is possible for people to notice. People tend to slow down, and actually have their life experience, and they enjoy it, and they feel more connected because everything, I call it the motherboard, everything is being brought online, and including our relationships. And because trauma and war and enslavement, there are many reasons why people do not want to enter the body. And you know, our great spiritual traditions say suffering is part of the package here. How are we going to suffer? You know, so that's a big part of the journey.
Well, we believe is that if you do different things, it's possible to learn different things. So if you only do the things you always do, you'll only learn what you can learn from those things. You know, as soon as you do a different thing, then there's a possibility of learning something new out of that or having a different kind of experience. So our work is a lot about trying to expand the range, really reclaiming some of the things that we may have weeded out. So, you know, it's really good when you're little to learn not to scream all the time when you're in public, but it's also good to remember that we can scream, and that there are times when that is probably a good thing to do.
I feel like by entering into the moment with whatever is, I feel it inside my body, this awakeness. I don't know if I can invite that for every person. For some people, it's really as simple as inviting them to put one hand in the air, move your hand slow and smooth. And we're going to do this little hand dance that I lead them into for a moment on behalf of, you know, a loved one who's suffering. And their eyes are tearing up. For 40 years, they've been working around the struggle of this loved one, and they've never had a chance to do that. And their eyes are tearing up because something else is being tapped. To me, that opening is where the sensations can connect somehow all the way through the body, you know, through movement, through emotion, through the movement of thought, everything moving. That, if I can just allow that space for movements to happen, I feel like that's, and for some kind of blessing, you know, in that. I feel that's a kind of a victory, you know, for me.
I've struggled with embodiment in my life for a variety of reasons. One, I think, was when I was a child. I was kind of a very ill and weak child. So early on, I learned how to mistrust my body, as my body was something that was kind of working against me almost. I also, as a kid, had an experience where an older friend tried to take advantage of me sexually. That didn't happen, but it left, I felt violated. So again, the body was kind of vulnerable. And I grew up around big statues of Lenin and Stalin, of these big figures who were always portrayed as bigger than life. They were ideals. And so the message that I internalized is that it's about ideals, not about particulars. Part of my attraction to monastic life was just about trying to bypass my hurt, my trauma, and etc. And it's only in my 20s when I went to psychotherapy, when I began engaging with body practices, and that I discovered that for me, exercise is probably the most important prayer practice that I can do. Because it's not the only thing that I need to do, but it really puts everything else, enables everything else, I would say. I think the body is very important, and for me it has been a lifelong journey, and I still try to do my best every day to move, not always successfully. And I think the body is very important in terms of cultivating a vessel into which the presence of God can descend, a holy temple in which God can live. In terms of talking about the presence of God, something that I am very much aware of in my life is that most of the good things that happen in my life, it's all God. And I know that because I don't have a lot of great skill sets. I can do what I can do. So I don't have any illusions. about having some kind of great abilities or something like that. It's God. And so all I can do is just trust and cultivate this mind, body, soul, or whatever we want the spirit being to be responsive to that presence. And that requires practice, and I'm trying to do my best to do that.
InterPlay for me is the system of joy and affirmation, and always looking for the good, and being able to change, to improvise, to be in the moment. And that is also something that makes sense to me as a person who meditates and prays, because that's what we do. We pay attention to our thoughts. And this whole idea of the wisdom of the body, it's the wisdom of the body. And it made perfect sense to me coming from the theater. Being an actor, you really have to learn how to use your body as an instrument. It has to be at your beck and call for everything you want to create. And I studied a lot of mime, corporeal mime, and dance. And so being so aware of my body, the interplay idea of really paying attention. One of the most important things is noticing. We notice. Notice what's happening. Notice your breathing. Breathing is fundamental. We breathe in, we breathe out, we pay attention. So the whole idea of paying attention, staying and creating in the moment, and the importance of play and joy, and realizing, I think, that the body is not just a container for the mind. The body is a source of wisdom in itself. And there's an intelligence in the body, and one of the things I learned in theater that we say, and that I know from InterPlay as well, is that the body never lies. The body never lies, and so it will always tell you what's going on with you. And part of our challenge is to notice, pay attention to what is happening. And our bodies will always tell us what's going on, and when we don't pay attention, is when we kind of go off track and become ill, and that contributes to it.
If I just understand myself as a body, I don't have to stretch my consciousness very far. You know, I'm Fred and Sally's boy. I'm George's cousin. There's no stretch going on there. But if I grasp that I have a body, but that I am not my body, I have this body, but I choose a relationship to this body. And I have these thoughts, but I am not these thoughts. I choose a relationship to these. I have these feelings. I have these feelings that are real. But I'm not my feelings. I choose a relationship to these feelings. And at a certain level, we are delivered to something that is a whole lot closer to our essential reality, which we're going to talk about as flow. Something that is dynamic and is present and is forever. And when I essentially connect with that, then I connect with a reality that goes far beyond this thought, that feeling, this body. And in the first instance, when we think about relationships, the first level of that is what we would talk about in popular culture as attitude. But it goes a whole lot deeper. And when you and I begin to stumble, however, into this consciousness, we begin to become aware of our awareness. We begin to notice our noticing. And at a deeper level, it's sort of like you walk into the room of mirrors at the circus. You know those mirrors where you look into them and the mirrors of mirrors of mirrors. We begin to connect with a consciousness of our consciousness of our consciousness. Sit with that for a moment. It's what Mr. Kierkegaard was inviting us to explore. And the thing is about relationships as a dynamic, it's not very romantic. This is not a pretty word. There are a lot of other prettier words to talk about depth that sort of leave us with a fuzzy consciousness. The nice thing about Mr. Kierkegaard's insight is that it potentially can give us some clarity. Not clarity that we're going to have it figured out, but clarity that I don't have it figured out, I will never have it figured out, and that's as figured out as I'm going to get it. And I get that I don't get it. You get it? That's it. Relationships are invisible. And yet, when everybody you know encounters you, paradoxically, the you they encounter is those invisible relationships that you choose. Relationships are interior. They are chosen in the depth of my consciousness inside this physical body. Relationships are intimate. There is nothing more personal. And relationships are infinite. Because when I consciously choose a relationship, the finite and the infinite connect.
Considering myself as an interplay between the deep things I can never fully grasp and my very tangible physical body that is my temporal habitat, somehow, weirdly, seems to fit with my actual experience of my real life. I am now compelled to give voice to this more inclusive reality of who and what I am. A human being, yes, but something more, something deeper. A flow being. A flow being connected always with an infinite presence. A new frontier of experience is beckoning. Let's continue.